I've got a question for the people living in the UK. How many of you know what this is behind me? I guess that gives it away. But also, how many of you know what this is? And out of the two, which would you pick? First, take a look at this. We can see it's called a PC Engine Duo. So there was a base console originally called the PC Engine, which was just these hue cards that go in here, like little hard cards. And I wouldn't say this really got an official UK release. It did come out very briefly, but not as much as this other console. So this one, which is slightly bigger, is the Neo Geo AES. This is a home arcade version of the Neo Geo MVS. Now, I would say the difference is the PC Engine Duo was more unknown, so it didn't really have as many followings, whereas the Neo Geo was pretty much known as the king of home arcades. What's your preference between the two? I'd say the Neo Geo is known more for fighting games, and the PC Engine's definitely known more for role-playing games and sort of Japanese imports. They're a lot more sort of friendly games. Now, in terms of repair, this one's come in because it's got quite a few issues. So if we read through all this, ultimately what's happened is the console's had a recap inside and an RGB mod, but there's issues with the RGB mod. There's ripped pads on the caps, so those two is two separate issues, but it also doesn't read discs, which is the main issue. Before we start working, we want to power this up and see where we're at. If you're unsure of how to power any retro consoles, go to retro6.wiki, go to power supply details, and this is a list that I've made specifically myself from powering the consoles up. There's a lot of misinformation on the internet where things like, say, the SNES have completely the wrong specs. So I've made sure that when I write the specs here in the sizes, I know they work because I physically, say, plug them into an actual console. So for this one, we want to look at the PC Engine Duo. The Duo R is white, the Duo is black. So this is a positive inner, and it's a 6.3 by 3mm jack. So I'll get the bench power cable that I've made so we can power this from bench. A custom-made RGB cable from my Neo Geo AES RGB cables, because the PC Engine is wired slightly different. And let's power that up. And there's one of the first issues. We have completely the wrong colour, or this is wired differently than the mod. So let's just get inside of this and see what's going on. Taking a look inside, let's just focus on the RGB first. We've got this mod here, and if we Google that, we get this mod where they've got the R, G and B on the outer pins. Compared to the Retro6 wiki of where the most common wiring for RGB is, that matches. And checking our custom made cable, you can see red on the edge, green in the center and blue on the edge. When that flips around and plugs in, you end up with red on the outer, green in the middle and blue here. So the cable's correct, but the answer will be in this note here, where the customer does actually mention that he's installed it. However, he's physically bridged pins on the chip around them. So we just need to take a look. That could be this chip here, which it doesn't look like, or it could be maybe underneath where this wire's going. Flipping the board over and looking where the work's been done, we can see that's definitely going to be the issue. There's a lot of burnt pads and mess here. I'm just going to remove these wires and see what's going on. Let's just remember this order for now. So orange, yellow, white, because they're going to be the red, green and blue wires, but obviously not in cable colour order as such. I'm just going to reflow all these pins as well, and then take a look under the scope if there's any torn traces. I don't think it's bridges like the customer mentioned. I think it's more torn traces. So just plenty of flux, plenty of solder, reflow all of these pins. A quick clean up. And now we can see much better what's going on. Under the scope now, with all that cleaned, it does look perfectly fine. So maybe it was just bad soldering. Let's reattach the wires and find out. And there we go, the screen's back to where we want it. So next up, let's focus on the actual CD load issue. Let's just test with the Far East of Eden. We'll chuck that in, snap on the cover. We have to hold down the lid closed, and we also have to press run, because this will say press run. Once we do that, the disc should take about 4 seconds at most to go from spinning to loading. It's a very fast loading system, and we can see that's not the case here. In order to tune it, I've done absolutely tons of reverse engineering on it, and it's all these potentiometers here and all this circuit. And if we go to PC Engine Duo on the wiki, laser tuning, you can see here this is probably the most detailed laser tune I've done on a console. We go all the way to the eye diagram, how to tune it, what everything means. Literally the whole setup is absolutely huge. So if you can't figure it out from this, then your laser's probably dead. I even went further into the RF amp circuit at some point because I had an issue with the amp circuit on the back and how to test that as well. So using all that knowledge that I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to spin these blindly into one position and I bet it'll work. And there we go. So now we just need to fine tune based on the sound, which the details are on the wiki. Whether you get certain pulsing or whirring, it tells you which dial to tune. And if we listen, what do we hear? That's a constant pulsing, so multiple pulses like that. Which, if it's pulsing laser, it's VR103. And while it's running, if we tune that live and listen for the noise change, and there you go, totally silent. So now there's pretty much no noise out of that. And the game is loading perfectly fine. Let's just check we get audio. That'll be the sign that it's tuned well. Audio tracks will just skip if you've got slow loading discs. And there we go, audio's loaded straight away. The disc speed's right. So now just for a bit of general maintenance. I'm going to clean all of the fluff around all these chips up with flux and a reflow, because that won't be doing it any good. And that's all them chips reflowed and cleaned up. So I'll give this one a full test in QC and get it back to the customer.